A highly logical figure to add to your collection. Here's your look at the Diamond Select Star Trek Mr. Spock action figure. When the USS Enterprise crew is called back home, they find an unstoppable force of terror from within their own organization has detonated the fleets and everything it stands for, leaving our world in a state of crisis. With a personal score to settle, Captain Kirk leads a manhunt to a war-zone world to capture a one-man weapon of mass destruction. As our space heroes are propelled into an epic chess game of life and death, love will be challenged, friendships will be torn apart, and sacrifices must be made for the only family Kirk has left, his crew. This select action figure of Mr. Spock is based on his appearance in the movie Star Trek Into Darkness and features approximately 22 points of articulation. It includes multiple accessories and energy effects, as well as a diorama base. It was designed and sculpted by Gentle Giant Studios. I think the first logical step to make is to measure off how tall Mr. Spock stands, taking the tape measure right to the very top of his head, according to the readout, right there. 7.3 inches in height is Spock, and switching that over to centimeters, 18.7 centimeters tall is the figure here. Of course, it would also be helpful to do some size comparisons. So there is Spock next to Captain Kirk, a figure that we already had a look at. I don't know if it's just for the fact that I've got the legs very far apart, but it seems almost as if Kirk does look short. Oh, but he obviously is shorter than Spock, but it does actually make him look even shorter still, to the point where Kirk falls down. But there's the two figures that we've had a look at thus far. It's the only figures, as far as I know, that we've gotten from the J.J. Abrams. I'm hoping, though, that Diamond Select is going to want to continue this trend and give us future figures, at the very least, at least the original crew, McCoy and Scotty, would be ones that I would be most excited for. The accessories? Yes. What of the accessories? To come included with Spock is the transporter pad display stand that comes included with the figure, which just so happens to be the exact same carbon copy stand that came included with Kirk as well. And to answer a question that my past self had asked when I did the review of Kirk, was that were they shaped specifically in a way that you could connect the two together? Well, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. You can also connect the two together. I'm wondering if this will be a trend, something that will be continued on with future figures. Let's hope, fingers crossed, that we do get ourselves future Trek figures from the J.J. Abrams universe. And then you could just continue on the trend. Although really, based on the curvature of these, you would imagine that if you get enough of these, it's not going to form a perfect circle. In fact, it's going to pose to be like the shape of a giant boomerang. So they're going to be a little bit bigger, but at least you can connect them together. Like the Kirk's stand, though, there is no peg point on the top. Spock's foot does have peg feet, peg holes on the undersides of his feet. You don't believe me? Shame on you. He does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet. See? Told you. And despite that, he doesn't actually have a peg point on the top of the stand, but that's still okay. I mean, I guess these figures don't really have a problem standing, but I guess if you want to get into more dynamic pose, I don't really think the crew of the Enterprise will be posing dynamically as they're being beamed off of the transporter pad, but I guess if you wanted to do something a little bit creative, you wouldn't be able to do it as well, being that those peg points aren't there. What he does have here, though, is for other accessories. He has a fair bit, just as much as I would say Captain Kirk. I think actually the accessories work out to be about the same. If I've missed maybe one over the top of the other, I think maybe Kirk has one extra hand, or Spock has one extra hand, which I guess gives Spock the 1 point for extra accessories. Let's have a look at those accessories now. Why don't we start with the smaller ones, because, well, they are the smaller of the batch here. He does come with the communicator, and he does also come with the tricorder. from the Abrams universe. So they're a little bit more simplified, but I guess even like if you look at the tricorder, it's not that much different really than the pouch purse tricorder that they had for the original classic series. It's a very similar look to it. I kind of wish though that the communicator would have been a little bit more exciting. It's not necessarily a dig on Diamond Select because they're basing it from the original movie designs, but I always thought that the design of the communicator was just a little boring. Wish they could have added a little bit of gold or something on the top to mimic the communicator that we would have had from the classic series. Going also back to a point that I talked about with Kirk's communicator, I keep flipping between hand and hand here. While it does look good, I wish that Spock could have had a variation to this, something in which the top flap could have been opened up, and this would have had a variant to the closed one that came with Kirk. As I said, these are exactly the same. There's nothing different between them. Also carrying on these samesies, he does come with the various different phasers. A tactical phaser type A, and then he also has the hand phaser type B. We'll go into a lot of time discussing this, but in the universe, you would have been able to remove the hand phaser. I know I talked about this for Kirk's review, so I won't talk a lot about this now. But the type B, where the hand phaser would have been attached like so. It would have been on the inside of the larger phaser rifle, and you would be able to take it out. So kind of cool. I don't remember we actually even seeing that in the movie, but that was kind of the proposed plan for it. The other thing he does come with, because I mean these are standard staples for what came with Kirk, he does also come with this. And I think it's just, again, a variation of the phase rifle. It's a little bit bigger, it's a little bit more complex, a little bit bigger, I guess, in size to actual Kirk's phase rifle here. Just, again, a nice variation of some of the Starfleet tech that they had available. Also going back to something else that Kirk came included with, but this is a slight variation to that. Spock also comes with the two different phaser attachments that would attach to the ends of the phaser rifle and the handheld phaser. Now, specifically, if you look at this one right here, the shape of it is longer. Well, it's longer because it will attach to this one here and just attaches like so. This one holds a lot better than the one that came included with Kirk. I guess if you wanted to, you could attach it by in here, but it doesn't really hold it as well. It actually really is suited for this one here. And then the other one that it comes included with is this one here, which was best suited for displaying with the tactical phaser. Still, I like these in that Diamond Select includes them, but honestly, I'm not a big fan of the shape. I find there's a lot happening back here that if you're adding this to a phase rifle, for example, or the handheld phaser, I think there's just a lot sticking out from the sides. I think it's a little bit too much. This also, I guess they did want to make it so that it wasn't a point. It's not sharp at all, but I just feel like it sticks out too much, and it's just not the proper shape for what it's supposed to be. Again, I appreciate the fact that they would have included it, but honestly speaking, I would not display the figures with these. That's just my own personal preference. Other things that come included with Mr. Spock is some interchangeable hands. So he does come with various different gripping hands, smaller hands, for example, for holding like the portable hand phaser, like this one right here. Or if you also want to get a little bit bigger, he does also come with a more flat palm suited for holding the tricorder. Or if you also wanted to display it, this is the one that's best suited for holding it with the larger phase rifle. And again, that would just attach to the arm on this side here. So those are the accessories. Oh, and also, of course, we can't forget, almost forgot, he does also have the trademark Live Long and Prosper finger spread hand as well. Only on the one side, this side right here. To also show you how that works, let me just go ahead and detach the hand. It just works on a simple peg system. Just pop that out like so. Sometimes when I do that, I like to make little popping noises. I don't know why, I just feel the need to do that. And then you have Spock with his Live Long and Prosper. Which I know most times, if you ever get a Spock figure, it's kind of like It's a requirement in the same way that Spider-Man's finger web shooting hand is always often a requirement for displaying the figure. Most likely, I'll display Spock, I think, with this hand gesture, because after all, it's Spock, and it's live long and prosper, and it is a requirement. It really is. I'm going to go ahead and pop that back into place. You don't need to make a popping noise to do that, though. And let's have a look at the figure. Now, I will say, I'll get this out of the way immediately. I love this head sculpt. That is a fantastic head sculpt for Spock. Unfortunately, though, immediately getting out of the packaging, I was fighting. I was not fighting with myself. I was fighting with this figure to move his head. And I think, unfortunately, what has caused the problem and anguish on my part is the fact that they added extra paint. Maybe there was too much paint, or the paint didn't dry properly. For whatever the reasoning was, when I moved the head, it eventually gave way. And when it gave way, let me just twist it around to the side here, all this paint came off of his neck. Now, I'm not going to right off the bat sign off on the idea that this is going to be exactly the same problem as all the figures across the board. So it's not to say necessarily that if you pick up this Spock for yourself, you're going to have the same problem. It could just easily have been mine. But I do have to mention it, because obviously if I don't mention it, someone's going to ask, well, you never mentioned the fact that there's all this paint removed from his neck, so I do have to point that out. Again, it probably isn't going to be across the board. If you manage to pick up this figure for yourself, though, most definitely let me know down below if you had similar paint problems in his neck. It's not so much the issue if you have the head kind of hiding it. It is unfortunately, though, when you turn the neck too much or the head too much away from the neck, you do see the visible removings of paint. So I'll probably just end up having the figure facing forward. That's enough for me. It's disappointing that it would happen. I mean, I'm obviously not going to forget that it's there, and I'll just move the head into place in the meantime. But yeah, I'll just have to work around it for the time being, or maybe possibly pick up a second Spock. If I'm really so inclined to display him with his head turned, I don't know. Likeness-wise, though, it definitely looks exactly like Zachary Quinto. And to be fair, the Kirk looked so much like Pine. I think I really have been signing on board for the idea of Diamond Select releasing more of these. If this is the kind of likeness that we're getting for these figures, it's a far cry, really, if you ask me, from the stuff that we were getting from McFarlane, who has so far dipped their toes into the realm of Star Trek figures. I think still with only a Picard and a Kirk. I don't even know what else they're going to be doing with the property, but I'm kind of liking more so what we're getting here from Diamond Select. The likeness, like I said, is uncanny to Quinto, and most definitely uncanny to Spock. Yes, there is some paint in the corner of his eyes. For the most part, other than excluding the mess that has happened with his neck, I'm overall quite happy with the paint. There's a little bit of speckling on the back there. I could probably just touch that up with a marker. As we move further down, it's pretty much the exact same thing as we got with Kirk's body. In fact, I'll bring in Kirk's body so you guys can see. Is it the same body from what I can see? No. The torso is different, the upper torso is different, and also you'll look at it, the wrinkles are in different placements from the lower half. Wrinkles here on the side aren't here quite necessarily in the same place for Spock. It does seem like they are different to one another. So they aren't going the route necessarily of the Ghostbuster figures where they're pretty much using the same molds for each of the bodies. The bodies here for Kirk and Spock do seem different. You can also help but notice that Spock's body is a little bit longer than Kirk's is also as well. Moving further down from the top tunics to the lower half pants. The pants also seem like they are different from one another. I'm wondering, though, if the lower legs, at least, well, even if you look at the placement of the knees, Spock's knees are a little higher than Kirk's, but I'm wondering if they have reused some of the thigh components or the torso components. It does look maybe like Spock's is just a little bit bigger than Kirk's. Don't tell Kirk that, though, whatever you do. The boots are also a little bit different, as in the sense that Spock's is longer, but I did also notice that for Spock's, they've kept to using the matte black paint. Still perplexing as to why they use the shinier black on Kirk's top part of his boots, when really the rest of his boots, like Spock's, are a matte black paint. So I'm not really sure why specifically just for Kirk they went with shinier boots, while Spock doesn't have that. Also has the noted buckle there on the side of his boots as well. If you look really, really close, I know we already talked about this before, you can see the Star Trek emblems. That seemed to be a popular thing for films that were taking basically basic clothing. The other one that comes to my mind is, for example, like the Superman outfits. Both the Superman Returns outfit and as well as the Man of Steel outfit that Henry Cavill wears has similar, let's fill it in with similar shapes. I think they've done that with a couple of other movie costumes as well. But here it's very presently apparent. You've got the little Star Trek emblems there making up the most of his body. Now, they have gone a lighter paint, so like a blue paint over top of a likely black plastic. You see a little bit more of it with Spock's body than you do with Captain Kirk's. Here you've got peekings of black plastic peeking their way through the blue. It's a bit jarring on the one on the top here. It's not as bad on this side, and I barely notice it here on the center sections of his torso. For this guy's articulation, this is now 2 figures in a row I've actually said this guy's articulation. Hopefully I'm not offending this Vulcan. For Spock's articulation, his head rotates all the way around. I don't think I'm doing any more damage rotating the head as I am. I don't think any more paint is going to come off. Now that I've freed it from its paint prison, I don't think any further is going to chip off. But the head rotates all the way around, up and down, and rock back and forth. Yeah, that's a bit of a shame. Shoulders hinge outward, though. That's good. And rotating all the way around goes the arms. You can rotate at the top bicep. You can also bend at the elbow. And you can also rotate the hand. Fancy that. Hinging back and forth. And while this one doesn't have the waist swivel, I'm convinced now that there is no cut of swivel on the waist. Most definitely, though, has the upper torso ball joint. And you can rotate that until the cows come home. Legs go out as such, and you can rotate the legs forward and back. Yes, there is a stopping point where it hits the square bottom of Spock's body, and unfortunately it doesn't move any bit further past that point. But he does have a swivel on just above a half cut of the thigh. Looks like it's about a three-quarter cut swivel on the thigh. He has a double hinge happening on the knee. Doesn't have anything, once again, in the boots, and the feet hinge up and down. And you can rock that ankle back and forth. Rock that ankle back and forth. Spock, I like Spock. I think of the 2 figures, it looks the most like his movie counterparts, and certainly most looks like the actor that portrayed him. It's not to say that Kirk is any bit of a slouch. I think both figures capture a Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto perfectly. I will say though that I think my favorite might be Captain Kirk. Even though I do like Spock and I think it looks the most like the actor, I'm still gravitating towards, I'm a Kirk guy myself. So for that reason, I think of the 2 figures, I like Captain Kirk just a little bit more. Getting Mr. Spock out of packaging and finding resistance immediately when I tried turning the head wouldn't give way. I knew it was eventually a case where if I just twisted enough, the head would eventually start moving. What I wasn't expecting was the paint flakes to fall on my lap, and I found that was highly illogical for such a thing to happen, but I guess in the spiritual realm of the universe, I was handpicked to be the one of all the figures to have problems with the paint still attaching itself to the head. Granted, yes, if I can pose this question to the rest of the crew, if you managed to pick up this figure for yourself or the Captain Kirk, did you have any of the same similar issues of the neck sticking to the head and some of the paint flaking off? Probably not, and it's probably just me. Despite the problems I had with the paint on the neck, and it's not something I could simply just, I guess I could color match the paint and see if I could touch it up for myself, or one better, I could easily just see if I can find another Spock somewhere in my local comic book stores and pick that one up. But I really don't want to spend another $40 to get another Spock simply just because this one had the paint problems on his neck. When I guess it's all said and done, I probably just won't be moving the head all that much anyways, because if the figures look the way we're looking here in final looks, it's probably going to be the way I'm going to be displaying the figure anyways, with the live long and prosper sign hand up, and the head probably just looking straight forward. So probably going to save myself the extra $40 picking up a second figure for one I already have in my collection. Admittingly, I like Kirk and Spock in the films. I feel though both of them I don't feel looking back on it now, Into Darkness was a good way to show the chops, the meaty lines that these characters could have possessed. Ultimately, Into Darkness, I think, is an ill-fated sequel because it feels so much like it's treading over Wrath of Khan. We're just getting another remake here. I kind of wish that they could have gone a different route. Don't get me wrong, both Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto represent their characters well enough in the second outing for the Enterprise, but I still feel like, looking back on it, they probably should have gone a different route for a different story and not simply just do a fan service. When it was all said and done, I think the fans revolted, and I don't think they were all that keen with yet another Wrath of Khan. Still, though, these are fantastic looking figures. They don't have to necessarily be in the realm of Into Darkness. They could easily inhabit any one of the universes that the 3 Star Trek films traveled to. If you manage to pick up these figures for yourself, let me know down below what you guys think of the Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock from the J.J. Abrams universe. I hope, though, this isn't the last journey we're going to be making into the J.J. Abrams universe, both on film and for what Diamond Select is going to be releasing. As far as I know, we still don't have a J.J. Abrams Enterprise. I would have to double check that. Maybe check with the computer and see if that's the case. But if they haven't released it, even though I'm not crazy on the thruster designs on the back of the ship, I still wish I would love to add the J.J. Abrams Enterprise to the existing library and catalog of the starships that Diamond Select have released up to this point. If they haven't released it yet, Diamond Select, please make that happen. In the meantime, though, just a great looking Spock, omitting, of course, the ill-fated problems with the paint on his neck, but still overall I'm pretty happy with how this figure turned out. Today, though, we were having a look at the J.J. Abrams Mr. Spock from the folks over at Diamond Select and the world of Star Trek. Neat looking figures. If you are new to this channel or a long-time viewer, then maybe you want to jump on board the Enterprise and come on this journey with me, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and swing on over to the, I guess the Meadowvale. What was the place where McCoy works at? Is it just a medical lab? Medical room? I don't know. Swing on over to McCoy. I'm sure he's got something negative to be telling you about the crew and maybe even Mr. Spock. Swing on over and make sure you turn on that bell notification so that when future videos, maybe even some future Star Trek videos will be coming soon to this channel, you'll never miss out. And never missing out, I think, is always crucial. Don't be the person that gets left out of the mix. If everybody else has beamed off the planet, don't be the only person that still is on the planet saying, hey guys, what happened? I just went for a coffee. Apparently that planet served coffee. They call it something else. They call it umjab, but it's still coffee. And it's delicious. It's quite strong, actually, as well. You may want to even add some milk, 2 sugar, to umjab. Anyways, though, guys, more videos will be coming your way, so stay tuned for those. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.